All right, let's dive into something pretty cool today. Like, we're talking about how to sing with more emotion, like really connecting with the music. You sent this article called How to Sing with Emotion, Adding Expression and Feeling to Your Songs. And honestly, it sounds pretty simple on the surface, but I have a feeling there's more to it, don't you think?
Oh, absolutely. There's this whole myth that singing is just about nailing those notes, when really it's about connecting with the heart of the music,
Mhm.
letting the emotion flow through you.
So it's about more than just technique. Like, we're going deeper into how to make a song actually resonate with people who are listening.
Exactly. And the article really hits the nail on the head when it says, music, IS, emotion. It's emotion that we can hear. I mean, think about it. A simple melody. It can, evoke joy, sorrow, longing, the whole spectrum of human feelings.
Oh, for sure. I mean, we've all had those moments where a song just completely gets to us. It unlocks a memory or makes you feel something so deep inside. That's the power we're talking about, right?
Totally. And what's interesting is that the article stresses this seemingly basic element, consistent, connected sound. It might sound kind of counterintuitive, but having that foundation is actually crucial for believable emotional delivery.
Okay, now I'm really intrigued. How does having smooth, consistent vocals tie into expressing emotion?
Well, imagine someone talking in this hesitant, choppy way.
Yeah,
Right away, they seem less credible, right? You wouldn't fully trust or believe what they're saying.
I totally get it. It's like those audio clips in the article. One has this speaker who sounds so uncertain, almost like they don't even believe what they're saying themselves. But then the other clip, it's got this smooth, confident delivery, and that makes the speaker instantly more engaging and believable.
Exactly. It's the exact same thing with singing. If your vocals are shaky or disconnected, the audience, they're less likely to connect with the emotion you're trying to get across. It's like they might even see you as insincere, even if you are feeling it.
So even if you have all the emotion inside, if your technique isn't there, it won't land.
It won't translate.
So having that strong technical foundation lets your real emotions shine through more authentically.
Precisely. Think of it like a house. You need that solid foundation to support the beautiful design, the architecture. Otherwise, everything just falls apart.
That's a fantastic analogy. Okay, so we've established that technique is essential, but how do we actually decode and express the emotion in a song? The article has this three-step process that I think is super helpful.
Let's break it down. So the first step is figuring out the overall emotion of the song. What's the main feeling the songwriter is trying to communicate? Joy, sadness, anger. But get specific. Sad can mean a million different things.
Right, exactly. Are we talking like the quiet sadness of a Billie Eilish song, or like the raw, heart-wrenching sadness of a Janis Joplin song, or the angsty sadness of Linkin Park? Like, pinpointing that specific flavor of sadness is key.
Absolutely. Then the second step is understanding how that emotion changes throughout the song. Does it slowly build? Does it shift between, different shades of the same feeling? Does it make these unexpected turns?
It's like you're mapping out the emotional journey of the song, right? Where it begins, where it ends, and all those important points along the way.
Exactly. And finally, step 3. This is all about the tools you use to bring those emotions to life. The article calls it the singer's toolbox.
Oh, this is where it gets really interesting. The article lists 7 tools, including vibrato, breathiness, even things like vocal fry and scoops and runs, and it seems like each one creates a different emotional effect.
Yeah, and let's start with breathiness.
Yeah.
I think it's such a good example of how vocal techniques can actually mirror like our natural ways of expressing emotion.
Okay, I'm with you. What is it about breathiness that makes it so effective for conveying emotion?
Well, think about how our voices naturally change when we're feeling vulnerable or weak or even exhausted.
Yeah.
We often speak more softly with that breathy quality. It's almost like a subconscious way of signaling our emotional state.
It's like when you're whispering a secret or sharing something very personal. There's a certain intimacy and fragility to breathiness that pulls the listener in.
Exactly. And singers can tap into that connection by using breathiness in their performance. Just think about Billie Eilish, for example, how she uses breathiness to create that sense of intimacy and vulnerability. It's so effective.
Yeah, it's so subtle, but it makes such a huge difference. Now, what about vibrato? I feel like that one's often misunderstood.
Vibrato, when used subtly, can add this feeling of release or resolution. It's like letting out a breath after holding tension for a long time.
Oh, like when a singer holds a long note and then they add just a touch of vibrato at the end. It's almost like a sigh of relief, a moment of emotional catharsis.
Exactly. And if you compare that to a part sung in a straight tone, the vibrato becomes even more impactful. It's all about the contrast. how you use these tools to shape the emotion throughout the song.
Okay, yeah, I'm starting to see how these little vocal things, they actually play a huge role in shaping the emotion of a song. But we've only just begun to explore this singer's toolbox, all right?
There's so much more to uncover. From like the power of dynamics to the more controversial world of vocal fry and those scoops and runs you mentioned, we can dive into those in the next part of our deep dive.
That sounds awesome. I'm already hooked on how much goes into creating a performance with real emotion. So, listeners, stay tuned for part two. We'll keep unpacking those emotional tools and see how they can add layers of meaning and expression to your singing.
And in the meantime, while you're waiting, pay attention to the singers you really love. Listen to how they use their voices to convey emotion. See if you can spot any of the techniques we talked about. You might be surprised by what you find.
I think I'm going to go listen to some Billie Eilish now. Thanks for all the insight so far.
You got it. Back again for more on singing with emotion. Hope you've all been really listening to how singers use their voices. Those little subtle things to create that emotional connection.
I definitely have. It's like I'm hearing music with new ears now.
Oof. Okay, let's jump back into those vocal tools. I'm super curious about scoops and runs. They seem to get a lot of attention. Yeah, they're definitely attention grabbing. But they can be super effective when used, with purpose.
What I love about scoops is how versatile they are. Like, depending on how you use them, they can add playfulness, sass, even melancholy. It's pretty cool.
Exactly. A well-placed scoop can really highlight a word or phrase, add a layer of emotion that wouldn't be there otherwise. Amy Winehouse, for example. Her signature scoops were such a part of her unique style. They added so much personality to her performances.
And what about runs? Those seem to be all about, like, showcasing control and agility with your voice.
Yeah, runs can be impressive technically, but they should always serve the song,
Yeah.
not the ego. When used sparingly, they can express like a burst of emotion, like a release of pent-up energy.
Like in a ballad, when the music builds to this climax,
Yeah.
and then the singer just lets out this incredible run, it gives you chills.
Exactly. It's like that emotional release the listener's been waiting for. Think about Whitney Houston's runs. They were technically amazing,
Yeah.
but they also conveyed this raw emotion. It resonated with everyone listening.
Speaking of things that get a lot of buzz, both good and bad, what about vocal fry? What's the deal with that?
Vocal fry, it's interesting. It can add this texture and a sense of intimacy,
Hmm.
especially in genres like pop and R&B.
It's like that slightly raspy, almost whispery quality you hear in a lot of music today.
Like Lorde, for example.
Hmm.
Her use of vocal fry is a big part of her sound. It adds to that cool, detached feeling of her music. But like any tool, vocal fry should be used intentionally. Too much of it can become grating or distracting.
Right, it's all about balance and making sure it fits the song. Speaking of balance, let's talk about dynamics. I feel like that's something a lot of singers struggle with.
Dynamics are so important for shaping the emotional journey of a song. It's not just about being loud or soft. It's about those subtle shifts in volume. They create tension and release.
Right, like when a singer starts a phrase really quietly, almost whispering, and then gradually builds to this powerful crescendo, that gradual increase in volume, it creates so much anticipation and emotional buildup.
Exactly. It's like slowly turning up the heat until the water boils over.
Yeah.
And doing the reverse can be just as effective, like a sudden drop in volume. It can create vulnerability or intimacy.
Oh, yeah. That sudden silence can be so powerful. Okay, last tool on the list. Bright, edgy tone. What's the emotional story behind that one?
Well, a bright, edgy tone is often associated with power, assertiveness, and raw emotion. Think of rock singers like Freddie Mercury or Janis Joplin. Their voices had this edge. It just cut through the music and demanded attention.
It's like this visceral quality that grabs you and demands to be heard, but the article also mentioned that bright, edgy tone can be used to signal sarcasm. How does that work?
It's all about context and delivery. A singer might, briefly sharpen their tone to emphasize a word or phrase, and that creates a sense of irony or mockery.
It's like adding air quotes to a spoken phrase. Okay, we've covered a lot of ground here, but it feels like we've just scratched the surface of emotional singing.
Definitely. We've talked a lot about vocal techniques, but there's so much more. The article talks about learning from the greats, which I think is so important.
Oh, totally. Studying the singers we admire is like a masterclass in emotional delivery. What should we be paying attention to when we analyze their performances?
Watch how they use their voices to convey specific emotions. Like, what tone are they using in different parts of the song? How do they change their dynamics and phrasing? Are they using any of the tools we talked about?
And it's not about, like, copying them note for note. It's about understanding the reasons behind their choices and then finding our own unique ways to apply them.
Exactly. Imitation is a good place to start, but the goal is to develop your own authentic voice, your own approach to expressing emotion.
And don't be afraid to branch out, right? Like, what can a pop singer learn from an opera singer? Or a country singer from a jazz vocalist? There are so many possibilities.
The more diverse your influence is, the richer your own singing will become.
So we've talked about technique, learning from others. But there's one more thing we haven't really touched on yet. Performance.
You can have the most technically perfect vocals, but if you're not connecting with the audience emotionally, the performance won't have the same impact.
Right. It's about making that connection where the music goes beyond the stage and becomes this shared experience. And that's where stage presence comes in, right?
Imagine watching a singer who sings perfectly, but they just stand there, stiff, no expression. It wouldn't be the same, would it?
It's like the difference between reading a love letter and having someone pour their heart out to you directly. One is intellectual, and the other is like this visceral, unforgettable experience.
Exactly. The article mentions Demi Lovato's Grammy performance of Anyone. Her expressions, her body language,
Yeah.
it all conveyed the rawness, the vulnerability, the pain of the lyrics, even in the quietest moments.
She wasn't just singing the song, she was living it. That's what made it so powerful.
So as you go on your journey as a singer, remember this. Don't just listen to music, observe it. Notice those subtle choices singers make and how those choices add to the emotional impact.
Yeah, it's like unlocking this whole new level of musical appreciation. And who knows, you might even discover new things about your own voice along the way.
The more you notice, the more you'll understand the power of singing with true feeling. And that's what makes a performance truly special.
So true. Well, I think we've covered a ton in this deep dive, from technical stuff to those stylistic choices, and of course the importance of actually connecting with the audience. But I feel like there's still more to unpack.
You're right. Let's take a moment to let all of this sink in. And then in the final part of our deep dive, we'll wrap it all up and leave you with some things to take away and put into practice.
All right, we've been through a lot in our deep dive into emotional singing, from the technical stuff to the stylistic choices. It's so clear there's way more to it than just hitting the right notes.
It really is about like tapping into the heart of the music, letting that emotion come through your voice, connecting with the audience on a human level.
So let's bring it all together. What are the key takeaways you want our listeners to remember?
First things first, remember that technical skill matters, but it's just the beginning. Having a strong foundation allows your real emotions to come through, without distractions from like shaky vocals or inconsistencies.
Yeah, we talked about how even simple things like consistent tone and breath control can make a huge difference. It's about how believable and engaging you are as a singer.
Think of it like building a house, right? It needs that solid foundation to support all the design elements, the architecture. It's the same with singing. Technique is the base that lets your emotional expression really shine.
We also dug into that singer's toolbox. All those techniques like vibrato, breathiness, vocal fry, even those scoops and runs.
Yeah, and it's not about using every tool all the time. It's about understanding what each one can do, like what kind of emotional impact it creates, and then choosing the right tools for the song, for the message you're trying to get across.
We heard some awesome examples of singers like Billie Eilish, Amy Winehouse, Whitney Houston, how they use these tools to create their own unique styles and really connect with people.
And remember, you can learn so much from watching the greats. Don't just listen to them, study them. Pay attention to the little things in their delivery, how they use their voices to create emotion, to tell a story.
Yeah, it's about figuring out the why behind their choices and then taking those ideas and finding your own way to apply them.
Exactly. And don't be afraid to explore different genres. See what you can pick up from singers outside of your usual style. You never know where you'll find inspiration.
Then there's that final piece, performance. It's not enough to just sound good, right? You have to embody the emotion, connect with those watching, really bring the song to life.
Remember Demi Lovato at the Grammys? Her vulnerability, that raw emotion, you could feel it. It drew everyone in and created this powerful experience.
It's like she wasn't just singing the words, she was living them. That's what made it so impactful.
So as you continue your singing journey, don't just listen to music, observe it. Pay attention to the little choices singers make and how they contribute to the feeling of the performance.
It's like opening up this whole new world of how we appreciate music. And hey, maybe you'll discover new things about your own voice too.
The more you notice, the more you'll understand the power of singing with real emotion. That's what makes a performance truly special.
Well said. That wraps up our deep dive into singing with emotion. We hope you've learned a lot and feel inspired to put more of your heart into your singing. We'll catch you in our next deep dive.
See you then.